Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the PG Show, where we talk about all things college football. Today, I want to break down some of the football games that I am most excited to watch in week one. Later this week, we will also have a video with some other people on breaking down some of these games and the over-unders. But I just wanted to go ahead and get my takes out there and what I am excited to watch this upcoming week. And the first game on the slate, of course, is Oklahoma State versus Central Michigan, as Oklahoma State struggled with Central Michigan several years ago at home and lost that game. This one is intriguing to me because Oklahoma State lost a lot on defense and they lost their defensive coordinator. So I am curious to see how Oklahoma State bounces back and what they look like this season. Additionally, I am just excited to have the West Virginia-Pittsburgh matchup again. This is going to be a fun one. Not that I think we should expect a lot out of these teams this year, even though I've heard a lot about Slovis and him being one of the best quarterbacks in the nation from that Pittsburgh coaching staff. But it's just going to be a fun game to have back on TV on Thursday night, prime time, 6 o'clock at ESPN, and just be able to have college football back in our homes. Additionally, I am really excited to watch this Kansas game versus Tennessee Tech. And you might be saying, why Kansas and Tennessee Tech? I think Lance Leipold has the Kansas Jayhawks going in the right direction. And whether they win 3 or 4 games or not this season, I think it's going to be fun to watch just how these Kansas Jayhawks team develops, how they play throughout the season as they get blown out. We've seen teams get blown out before, and they played several close games last season. And a lot of those were one-score games. And let's kind of just walk through that a little bit because this one really intrigues me. So they beat South Dakota last year 17-14. They lost to Coastal Carolina 49-22. And if you guys watched that game and remember that, in the first half, that game actually was pretty close until Coastal Carolina pulled away in the second half. Additionally, they got blown out by Baylor. They got blown out by Duke. I say blown out by Duke. They lost 52-33. Iowa State, they lost 59-7, Texas Tech 41-14. They did play OU pretty close, and that game was actually closer than what the score leads to be. Oklahoma State, they got blown out. Kansas State, they only lost by 25, where again, the game got away from them in the second half. They did beat Texas last year in Austin, where they're going to be able to get Texas this year at home. But then the last 2 games of the season, they lost by 3 points to TCU and 6 points to West Virginia. And so I'm curious to see just what we get out of this Kansas Jayhawks team going into the 2022 season, as I think their schedule is favorable maybe to go out there and win 3 games. You play against a Tennessee Tech team, which you should be able to beat. That's a guaranteed win for them. Additionally, you get Duke at home, and I am going to give them that win because it's at home. And again, after what I saw from them last season, I definitely think Lance Leipold has got them going in the right direction, and I think they had a pretty good transfer portal season. Additionally, you play TCU at home, and if TCU has any indication of what they did last year, Kansas should be able to handily be able to go in and beat them, and I don't think TCU is going to be very good this year in Sonny Dykes' first year. And so I definitely think that they could probably go out there and maybe get 3 wins. And so it's going to be interesting to see just that the Jayhawks can go out there and stir up some trouble in the Big 12, especially with Texas. We all know we're going to be watching that game. Additionally, some of the other games that I'm really excited to watch is Texas A&M and Sam Houston. And you might go, why Sam Houston versus Texas A&M? And it's additionally because I want to see what Texas A&M is able to put out there at quarterback. And I know they just recently announced their starting quarterback for the season, but what are we going to realistically expect from the Aggies, as they have a pretty tough schedule this year, and we know they're going to get the beat down and the smackdown by Alabama? Additionally, on some of these games, I think the UTSA game really stands out to me because UTSA last year, if you remember, caused a lot of controversy being undefeated and not being ranked in the top 25 for so long, and additionally not being ranked in the Final Four when those rankings started coming out. And I know a lot of you might go, well, UTSA doesn't play the talent that some of those other teams do. And I want to make this argument, because it is really hard in football to go undefeated. The Oklahoma Sooners have seen the best of that throughout their time in the Big 12, right? Kansas State gets the best of them, or Iowa State, or Texas Tech, or even Texas earlier in the 2000s. And I think it's important to note that UTSA is playing equal level competition in their conference. And yeah, it might not be as impressive of an Alabama or an Ohio State or whoever is undefeated in some of these Power 5 conferences. But to be able to go undefeated is still really hard to do. And I think that you should still get credit for it regardless. Do I think that UTSA was a top 25 team? No, but you have to give them credit for going undefeated. And that you can't discredit going undefeated. If you do, then what's the point of playing football? So I think that's going to be pretty interesting because I think UTSA is a up and coming team in the group of 5. I think they could be like an Appalachian State where, yes, they're a group of 5 and a lot of teams might schedule them for an easy win, but they might not always be an easy win. Additionally, I want to see what comes out of this Oregon versus Georgia game. I know that they're saying it's a neutral site game being played at Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta, Georgia, but Oregon's having to fly from the West Coast all the way to the East Coast, and Georgia has to drive a couple miles to Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I don't see how that's a neutral site game, as Georgia's probably going to have 80% of that stadium or more packed for them. But it's interesting because Georgia lost so much on the defense last year that it's going to be curious to see just how they are able to kind of move on from that, especially with losing Dan Lanning. And if they have a national championship hangover, I think that Oregon potentially has a shot to go in there and cause an upset just like they did with Ohio State last year. Another game that is pretty interesting that everybody should be watching is that Alabama versus Utah State game. And it's not necessarily for the reasons that you think you should be watching it for. It's because I am curious to see how Alabama's quarterback room starts to shape up because Bryce Young is the only really tenured quarterback in that room. You have guys like Ty Simpson and other guys in that room that are all freshmen. And if Bryce Young happens to go down, I want to know, are any of those guys able to step up and be able to provide valuable minutes for Alabama and be able to lead that team to success? I don't know. To me, it would be scary to start a true freshman. OU had to do that last year with Caleb Williams, and you got to see those true freshman mistakes from Caleb Williams last year. Even though he did look like the better quarterback, you still saw a lot of mistakes from him. And I think Alabama, if Bryce Young goes down, could have those same woes. Additionally, I want to see what USC and Rice does. Because someone on our stream mentioned it earlier with Ty on the Round the Table Sports, which if you have not watched his podcast or went over to his channel, please go check him out. He is an incredible content creator. But Rice does cause trouble for a lot of teams. They do keep themselves in games. And I think there's a lot of hype around USC and what they are with Lincoln Riley coming and Caleb Williams and all these players that maybe the expectations could be set a little high. Maybe they could let their guard down and be put in a position with Rice that maybe they don't want to be put into. Ideally, I still think USC wins that game, but maybe it's a little closer and a little bit too close for comfort. I also want to see what we get out of Vanderbilt. So Vanderbilt put up an extremely great game last week against Hawaii, getting a great win for their first game of the season for the first time in a long time. And they are playing Elon. And I want to see, are they able to put up another 60 points, or are they going to kind of fall short on that mark? Hawaii has been deemed one of the worst teams in college football this year. And so I don't know how Elon is going to stack up in terms of talent comparison to Hawaii, but I am curious to see if Vanderbilt is going to be able to put together a season, maybe not to where they go win a lot of games, but are they going to be able to stir up some trouble in the SEC and in college football in general? I also want to see what we get out of Ohio State with CJ Stroud going into his sophomore year and Notre Dame. We all know Notre Dame's going to put out a competent defense that is going to be able to go out there and cause Ohio State some troubles. And this might be one of the best defenses Ohio State sees all year. Too bad it's early in the season, because you know how it is. Early in the season, teams might not have it together for that first game and could simply drop it. I could totally see Ohio State accidentally dropping this game because maybe they're just not in full season form, which they probably won't be, and Notre Dame could possibly take advantage of that. Now, I am curious to see how CJ Stroud and that wide receiver core kind of come together. I'm also curious to see how Jim Knowles in that defense, as Jim Knowles is coming in as a coordinator for the defense for the first year for Ohio State. Last but not least on this list, we have Florida State and LSU. And I put out the Twitter poll question the other day. Were you impressed with Florida State's win in their first game this season against, what was it, Dulcanois? I don't know how to say the college. They only put up, what was it, like 37 or 40 points, or 47 points? I would have expected them to put up at least 60. However, they did have 3 running backs rush for over 100 yards. And so I'm curious to see what we're going to get out of that game, because not only are eyes going to be on Florida State, but eyes are going to be on LSU, because LSU still has not named a starting quarterback, and LSU took in a lot of transfer portal people, but also lost guys like Eli Ricks on their defense. And so I think for both of those teams playing on a Sunday at 6:30 on ABC prime time, all eyes are going to be on those games, and this is a great recruiting opportunity for Florida State and LSU. And I want to point that out because Clemson and Georgia Tech also get this opportunity on Monday. When you are the lone team playing on a specific day during prime time, that is recruiting heaven for those coaches, especially with 2024 recruiting just opening up. This is an opportunity for Florida State and LSU to get a jump above other teams in the ACC and the SEC as well. But additionally, Florida State has been down for several years, and I am curious to see if Mike Norvell is able to finally put it together, not only get to a bowl game, but maybe win 7 or 8 games this year and get that team on the right track. As it looks like on the recruiting trail, Florida State is definitely struggling, and I want to see Florida State get back to a powerhouse in the ACC and contend with not only the up-and-coming Miami, but also Clemson as well. So go ahead and let me know down in the comments below, what games are you guys most excited to watch this week in week 1 of college football?